Right, and we are live. Thank you everyone for joining us on the live stream. And today it's a real pleasure to be joined by Dethra Giles, all the way from Atlanta, Georgia. And I resisted doing the accent. I have been practicing that for the whole day. And Deetra's international consultant, a best-selling author, keynote speaker. She's done TED Talks, all of that cool stuff. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be with you today.
Oh, thank you so much. I want to kick off with the thing that we're not supposed to speak about, which is politics.
Yes, let's do it. Let's do it.
Because, I'm in London and obviously we've been watching what's going on in the US, but mostly through the lens of the media. And then I've got family, they tell me stuff, but it's just a fascinating position. And then obviously we link it to the context of work and culture, but what I've been seeing is a lot on my social media feeds. Everyone's thank goodness Donald Trump's out, rather than saying yes, Joe Biden's in, and then you sit back and you get this feeling that a lot of people voted for Donald Trump, a lot of people voted for Joe Biden, and if you're working in a company, I guess the chances are you're going to be sitting next to someone that voted for the other side, right?
The chances are very high, and the way it pans out, you can tell how high those chances are, because as you've seen the maps, we can tell which states were red, i.e. voted for Trump, and which states were blue, i.e. the majority of those people voted for Biden, and by how much. So you can literally sit and look and say, okay, one in 3 people, so everybody else except for me and these other 2 people voted for Trump. So you can look around and pretty much guess how many people around you voted opposed to what you voted for. So it's pretty easy to know.
It's tough. But then how do you go back in on the Monday and, you're sitting next to your colleague, they voted for, I don't know, Donald Trump, let's say, but then, part of your values is inclusion, right? You want to include everyone, whether they're a Donald Trump supporter, a Biden supporter, whatever they are. It's tough, like really tough to do.
Absolutely. And so this is when our ideas about inclusion and diversity get put to the test, right? Because there's been this big push, especially in the US, for DEI, really having this reckoning about the conversations that we haven't had around race and gender and inclusivity. And it sounds good until it's challenged in the way that we don't want it challenged. So it sounds good when we say, hey, we need to be more inclusive about race. We need to be more inclusive about gender. But when we start saying, hey, we also need to be more inclusive about those political views that we disagree with, then it's, oh no, that's not quite what I was talking about. Well, are we inclusive or are we not? Because if we say there's value in the diverse ideas of thought, then we have to value it. What also happens is it's making many organizations question what they say. We say, bring your full authentic self to work. What we haven't asked the question is, what happens when your full authentic self is not aligned with our company values? Then what do we do? Because that's a very real thing that we have to ask ourselves, right? And we have to break that down. And also being willing to say, what do we make things mean? What we have done in the political climate is we've made our vote mean something. So if you voted for Trump, that is packaged in, you must be a racist or a misogynist or someone that supports rape culture. And if you vote for Biden, you must be someone that is concerned about the immigrant populations, cares about the promotion of women. And so we have to be careful of what we've made these things mean and make sure that our meaning is actually accurate.
Yes, definitely. Because I've seen a lot of news reports, and we get it in the media here, and it's Democrats celebrating the victory, but then there's this kind of slant on, Trump supporters were stupid, racist, he wasn't good for the economy, whatever all the kind of the dialogue is, and then you're left there thinking, okay, so the president's changed, but all of the underlying issues around race, around just the separation of society in the US is still there.
Right. And the funny thing about the whole thing is what we've made it mean is it was the president, it was Trump. And what I've always said is step back. Trump didn't just walk into the White House. He was elected into the White House. Now, we'll get into, maybe we won't get into it here, but the electoral college versus the popular vote, whole nother conversation for another day. That is a rabbit hole that we will be going down forever, right? But even with the electoral college giving him the victory, he still was voted in by enough people for the electoral college to be able to say, yes, this is how our vote should go. So my concern has never been the person themselves. It was what that person represents, because that person represents a mindset. But even going back to what you said, what we made it mean. So we made people who supported Trump mean they're dumb, they're ignorant. Listen, there are CEOs of Fortune 500, 1,000, Fortune 50 companies who support him. There are medical professionals who went to college and got their MDs, their PhDs, their PsyD, and all of these. So we can't lump everyone over there as these mindless, bumbling idiots. There are a conglomerate, a consortium of educated people who support this person. So that's why I said we have to be careful about what we've made that label mean, because one, if we don't question what we've made it mean, then we aren't able to really speak and educate around it or against it if we want to. The same is true on the other side. If we've made everybody over here mean a certain thing, then we don't check the issues of DEI over here because, oh, if you support Biden, you automatically are for this.
Yeah.
Everybody that supports Biden isn't completely around all this DEI stuff, right?
True. Very true. Very true. What about, everyone says bring your authentic self to work, right? Is that really bring your authentic self to work as long as you agree with what I agree with, or please bring your authentic self to work?
That's absolutely what most people mean. Most organizations say it so cavalierly. Oh, bring your authentic self to work. It's like the Statue of Liberty. Bring me you're hungry, you're weak, you're weary, you're poor. And then when people come here hungry, weak, weary, and poor, we're like, oh, we didn't mean you. And that's what happens. It's your authentic self as long as it's not an affront to my authentic self. And what we haven't done is what I even talked about in my TEDx talk. We haven't done the thing about teaching people conversational competence. So what happens when our authentic selves clash in the workforce? Give you a very simple example. I have a Jamaican background. So what happens when my authentic food, because I love a good curry, clashes with your sense of smell in the office, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, who is warming up that pungent odor that I cannot stand? That's authentically who I am. If I come in, you're going to get some curry. Right? And that's a very simple, non-threatening example, but it's just a microcosm of what is really happening on the grand scale. What happens when these authentic selves clash in the workforce? And since we're inviting it, are we actually teaching people how to deal with those clashes, because they are going to happen?
Definitely, definitely. Because, a lot of people want diversity, right? Diversity of thought, backgrounds. There's a whole drive for hiring, diverse people. When I'm doing my searches, people want a diverse slate to choose from, all of these things. So, and to your point, it doesn't sound like people are doing enough to actually onboard them properly and then integrate them with the company culture,
Right.
or even building the right culture necessarily.
And even the training part of it, because this is something that has to be trained. Think about your own career and your own trajectory as a business owner and as a professional. When did someone stop and say, Lewis, I'm going to teach you how to be competent in the conversation? Never. They don't. We don't even teach it in school. So what we say is, okay, don't talk about those topics because they're impolite. That feels so much better than saying, don't talk about those topics because we haven't taught you how to do it.
Yeah.
And because of that, you're actually incompetent and ill-equipped.
Well, to be honest, I mean, most of the time,
no one wakes up and says, I want to be incompetent and ill-equipped, right? So we don't do it.
But the thing is, at school, let's say at school, early on, I think Detra's just dropped off, so I'll keep chatting. I think at school we get taught not to speak about politics. We taught not to speak about those kind of things because it causes arguments, stuff like that. So, but it's interesting though, because people want diversity of thought, diversity of backgrounds. So I think, speak about it 100%. Let me see if I can get Dethra back. Oh, she is back. Here we go. Let's add you. You are back. I was freestyling, not very well. And you, I was like,
we were in the midst of an amazing conversation.
I was just saying that, when I was growing up at school, people said, do not speak about politics, do not speak about religion, don't speak about race, don't tell people you're Jewish, those kind of things, and then you enter the workforce, and then, I don't know, for me, I can't help it. I mean, I just find it really interesting, but I think I'm able to, the thing with humans is that you can hold two opposing views in your mind, right? You should be able to have a conversation with someone who disagrees with you, but it doesn't have to get heated, and we should be able to still be part of a high-performing team together.
We should be, but most of us aren't, because even as we talked about before, humans are tribal people. When we walk into a room, before we say, let's talk to everyone, we do a quick scan of the room and figure out who is most like us. Yeah. And we will likely navigate to that person. So we spend a great deal of our time talking to people who are aligned with what we already believe. So most often in our most common or most frequent interactions, we aren't challenged. And so when we meet that challenge, one, it's a muscle that we haven't flexed regularly. And two, we see it as an affront as opposed to a difference. And one of the things I teach my clients is that different and wrong are not equal. They're not synonymous. And so we need to be able to converse with different and not make it equal wrong. When we don't make it equal wrong, we don't feel a need to convert that person, right? That's where most of the arguments come in, is because if you don't change your mind to what I believe, then you're telling me I'm wrong, and no one wakes up wanting to be wrong.
That's so true. But it also happens at the boardroom table. If we're part of a committee, what you find mostly is people who shout the loudest tend to try and get their view across. You're shouting about the pros of your idea, the cons of your idea, but you're just shouting about your idea. And when most people have a conversation, they're just trying to convince the other person that their way is right.
Absolutely.
In a board situational committee, if everyone's thinking about the same problem together, okay, that's your idea. What are the pros? What are the cons? And you all go around. Much better decision making. But I don't know what it is. And look, I drift into it too. If we're having a dinner together and I'm talking to you about something, you just slip into, I'm trying to convince you that my way is the right way.
But that's what we've been taught. We've been taught healthy arguments or healthy debate ends in everyone being on the same side, right? We haven't ever really been taught that healthy debate can actually end with both people feeling the way they feel, and that being different and it being okay. We haven't been taught that. A healthy debate, even I used to be on a debate team. I used to coach debate, and winning means I prove my side and you're a loser. And no one wakes up like, let me be a loser today. Today is a good day to be a loser. So I'm going to argue my point until I convert you, because that's what I've been taught healthy debate is. Healthy debate is winning, and winning is all of us being on one side when this is over.
True. But if we all win, we all win.
Right.
you know? So, well, look, some people say it's about the taking part. I think it's probably about the winning. But in the debate stuff, I mean, when you're trying to come up with good decisions and you want to make friends with people, and it's fun to have friends from different backgrounds
Mhm.
who think differently. And, I don't know what it is, but we just need to just chill out a little bit.
Yeah, we need to be open. I think what happens is admitting that you're ignorant is somehow an affront. And so instead of admitting that we don't know, we make faux pas or we don't have conversations that we should have because it's not okay to say, you know what? I've never been around many Jewish people. I don't know a lot about the Jewish culture. And I may say something that's ignorant and offensive, and please hold me accountable for that. That feels like an affront, right? It feels like, oh my gosh, I'm admitting I'm being vulnerable. But we don't learn outside of vulnerability. We don't learn outside of acknowledging a lack of knowledge and asking someone to help fill that void where there's a lack.
Definitely, definitely. I love that. We could carry on speaking about that all day, but I also wanted to speak to you, and we'll do another one on that. But I wanted to speak to you also, I'll put it up, about employee-preneurs.
Yes.
And I hadn't really heard the term before I spoke to you about it. So for me, it would be a great place to start. Just what are they?
So it's one of those things I put together, and other people use it and they use it differently. So for me, we've heard the term entrepreneur, and entrepreneur are those people that really take on a project and manage it like it's their own. They take on an initiative and they manage that initiative like it's their business. That's not what an employeepreneur is. An employeepreneur is a person that recognizes my career is actually my business. What I tell my clients is you are a multi-billion-dollar organization and your career is your product. Now, with that in mind, are you a good CEO? And that's what an employeepreneur is. They are a person that recognizes, wait a minute, this career is actually my business, and I have a fiduciary responsibility to actually manage it like it's a multi-billion-dollar producing organization.
Love that. Love that. So great for people, right? If we think about our careers like that, and I also sometimes think about it like like I'm a professional sportsman. Like look after my health, make sure I sleep well, eat well, because I've got a long career ahead of me. Right,
Mm-hmm.
to your point. So you're saying if individuals should really think about themselves as a business, making money over the long term, and to behave like that.
Absolutely. And when you think this way, it's a game changer. Even, for example, the conversation we just had about those taboo topics in the workplace. If you're an employee, I am staying away from that. I am not having that conversation because I don't want to make my boss mad. If you're an employeepreneur, you say, wait a minute, as an employeepreneur, I have a brand. And this could be an opportunity to demonstrate that as a brand, I can have the tough conversations. If I can have this tough conversation, I can have the tough conversation with the team that's underperforming. This is now a time for me to demonstrate a muscle that I'm able to flex because I'm managing a business and that business needs to be seen a certain way. I'm going to engage in this conversation. I'm going to show them how it's done because I'm an employeepreneur, right? So everything you do is about advancing the business, getting new clients. Your boss is not your boss, he's a client.
Yeah. How do you get into that mindset? Because I speak to a lot of people at the moment, and they're worried about being made redundant. You've got the pandemic. There's a lot of companies are struggling. They see their colleague. How do you get into that? Because it's tough mindset to transition to.
It really is. And I actually talked about it. So that was what I talked about in my very first TEDx talk. I found that in one of my own, with a self-diagnosed breakdown, I was miserable in my career. And I looked around and asked the question, the people that aren't miserable in their career, what are they doing differently? How are they navigating their career where they seem to not even be on the career ladder? They're on like the career escalator, just going up. How is this happening? And they come to work happy every day. Either they're on drugs or they know something that I don't know. Drugs is not an option for me. So let's see what else. And as I began to study these people, and I studied people like the CEO, Ken Chenault, or Ursula Burns, and I started looking at how they navigated their career. And I said, wait a minute, they aren't acting like employees. These people are acting like entrepreneurs. They're really taking things that I see entrepreneurs mastering and entrepreneurs talking about and entrepreneurs advocating, and they're doing those things in their career. Wait a minute, there's something here. Maybe there's a combination. Maybe I'm supposed to put these two things together. And I did it myself. I was the first to experiment on myself. I'm that mad scientist. And I started applying these entrepreneur activities and entrepreneur attributes to my career. And just like that, my career started moving. I mean, it just took off.
So you were employed,
Mm-hmm.
quit your job?
No, I actually stayed. And that's the funny part, Louis, is that when I started my company, people ask, how is your company running so well? You're a new entrepreneur. And I laughed and said, no, I'm not. I've been managing a business for a very long time. I managed my career like a business. So I started as an employee and I was kind of lower level, started doing these things and got promoted to director. By 27, I was head of a department that was responsible for 20,000 plus people. Using these tools, I was at home on maternity leave, out of the office, maternity leave, just had a baby and got a call that I had gotten a promotion while on maternity leave because I was managing my career like a business. And I did that for a while before I stepped out and actually became an entrepreneur. I was an employee-preneur employed by an organization, a company for a very long time and did really well using entrepreneurial tactics.
Were you born with it? Were you born with that mindset, or can people learn those skills?
You know what? I wasn't born with it. I had to learn it. I was born with a tenacity. I was born to be a edge liver. I live on the edge. That was so when I came to this concept and said, this is radical. I don't know if this is going to work. This might backfire and fail miserably. I was born with a thing that said, try it anyway. Right. So that I was born with. But the concept of being an employeepreneur, I actually had to discover and learn. And I'm a person that documents. So I began documenting this so I could help other people with it. But I had to learn it.
I love that. I think it's so important right now because a lot of people wait for their employers to provide training, to provide the opportunities, like that paycheck, that monthly paycheck often stops a lot of people doing things.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to speak to their manager. They don't want to bring their authentic self to work. They don't want to have that conversation with their boss because they think differently, all of those things. And it's a very hard thing to transition from, say a passive employee, but an employee mindset to one of an employee-preneur. And I think it's a great thing to do. So it's just taking charge of your career. I think ultimately very liberating as well.
It is. But it can be very scary because if you think about the entrepreneur journey, now as an entrepreneur, I chase the word no. I really do. I am looking for my next no. And people are probably shocked, like, wait a minute, shouldn't you be looking for your next yes? But I know that, let's say, one in 5 deals is going to come through. That means I need 4 no's. Well, if I'm on no number 3, can I hurry up and get that 4th no so I can get my yes?
Definitely. I love that. It's same for me. Like, what's after a no? A yes. Like rejection. It can't get worse than rejection. You're gonna get that thing soon. So it's just, I love that, how you think of it. I mean, I started my own business too. And once you've jumped off that cliff and you're reliant on yourself and you're taking charge of your own life, your own career, it's a great feeling,
Yeah.
And then for me, I think, win or learn, right? I mean, okay, the phrase is often used a lot, but if I don't win that pitch, if someone doesn't want to use me for a search, I'm thinking, okay, well, what could I do better? What could I do differently? And I know the next one's going to be a win.
Absolutely. And even as an employeepreneur, what you learn is what entrepreneurs already know is oftentimes there is a huge chasm between yes and no. As an employee, I always thought the answer was either yes or no. When I became an employee-preneur, I realized that there was a huge gap. And there's a lot of stuff in between a yes and a no. Like, for example, I was coaching one of my clients and he wanted a promotion. So he went to his boss and asked for a promotion. The position did not exist, by the way. And the boss said, well, you know that position doesn't exist. Well, here's what happened. The answer was no, but he lived in the chasm between yes and no, because what they did was they started training him. They started giving him opportunities to work on projects to get cross-trained and learn additional skills. And within a year, they realized, you know what? We actually do need that position. And that no, because he lived in the chasm of preparation of the opportunities that just asking the question gave him about learning, he was primed for the position the next year when they actually finally created it.
Definitely.
And so as an employeepreneurs, you seek the no, but you often find out what's that gap in between, what happens in between this yes and this no that prepares me for it to be a yes next time.
Yeah. Let's answer this. We've got a few questions. Let me pick a couple of questions. And this one just links straight with what we've just been talking about, actually. So from Mary, can you give some specific example of how you shifted from power over, which I guess means your boss, your company, waiting for opportunities to come, to power with? So shifting that mindset.
Oh my gosh. The great question, Mary. So for me, the shift came from seeing people as the position I was told they were in to seeing them as clients, right? So I work with my clients. So my boss, who at the time was not my favorite person in the world, I thought, how do entrepreneurs treat the clients they don't like? Because if you think every entrepreneur likes every client, you are woefully and sadly mistaken. Some of my clients, I am just like, oh my gosh, if your check does not clear, you are cut off because I do not like you, right?
Yeah.
But I can't treat them that way because they're the essence of my business. So when I went from this is my boss to this is my client, this is my nagging coworker to this is my client, from this is the company that hires me to this company is my client, you work with your clients, right? And so it was that shift in how I viewed people that made me have a shift in mindset. Wait a minute, how do I work with this client? How do I serve them best? Because clients refer you to other clients. In my business today, over 90% of the work is referrals. So I have to be mindful of how I work with this client in order to get my next client. So it went from how I viewed those people, and that was a complete game changer mentally for me.
100%. And also they think about you differently. So then they start to treat you differently. Mm-hmm. You're focusing on giving them an unbelievable service, right? That like 5-star service.
Yes.
And going out of your way and then taking ownership of your training and your development, people start to think about you very, very differently. Absolutely. And then suddenly you're the expert in your field, right?
I'll give you an example. So when I made that shift, Mary, I actually went to my boss and said, what is it in your job that you absolutely hate doing? Like, what do you hate doing about your job? And she gave me a list of things that she hated doing. Well, as an entrepreneur, what I know is I solve my customers' problems. Because I saw my boss as a client, I said, well, let me do those things. I took about 2 of them that were high profile, high intensity, but she hated doing. And I said, well, let me take those on. I took those on. My client loved it, got me a promotion, right? Because as an entrepreneur, I'm thinking, how do I serve my client so that I can do better, different, or more work? Because that's how I get paid, right?
Yeah, love that. Let's take a question from Michael, because this leads us on to employers. So he's saying this needs the employer to allow employees to take risks, fail, and learn. So do you think it's on the company to let people be entrepreneurs, or irrespective, we should just...
I think it's that answer is a combination of things. One of my favorite people in the world, and in my head, she's like my best friend, but we've never met and she has no clue who I am at all. Her name is Caroline Wanga, and she's the interim CEO of Essence Media. And one of the things that she says is, if you can't be who you are, where you are, change where you are, not who you are. So the answer is there's an onus on both. One of the things I work, Michael, one of the things I work with companies on is how do you create this environment whereby you attract, retain, and promote employeepreneurs? But every company's culture is not inviting of these types of people. And if this is the type of career you want to lead, if this is how you want to advance, then you have to recognize that every place is not going to be your place. There were places that offered me great positions because of my employeepreneur brand that I knew I could not function that way and do well in that organization. And so I turned them down because I am not going to change who I am. I'll sooner change where I am.
Yeah. Do you think it's worth, and there's value for companies to create a culture that lets employeepreneurs thrive?
Absolutely. Because when we look at this, the things that employeepreneurs produce, even though the name was made up in my head, the characteristics, we can find the research. These people are way more innovative. They're way more efficient. They have an internal locus of control. So they are very driven to succeed because their name is on the line. They're concerned about what their next steps are. So they're always progressing. They take ownership of their career. So they're not bogging their leaders down with what's my next step? Teach me, help me, how to make me get to promotion. So these people can be the lifeblood of your organization and with very little oversight. So all of this management structure that you are concerned about having, they don't necessarily need it. They need some guidance, but they are self-starters. And that's what every company is really, really trying to get to.
Yeah. Especially virtually now as well.
Yeah.
You want people who can get on with it, you know?
Absolutely. But great question, Michael. Thank you for that one.
So it's worth companies creating the culture and attracting them. They're gonna derive a lot of value.
Heck yeah.
How can they actually attract them?
So here's the
What would
thing.
they need to do right now if they can't, you know, if their culture isn't a culture that an employeepreneur wants to work in?
So the first thing is that they need to step back from the idea of attracting them and step into the idea of developing them.
Right.
A lot of many companies have employeepreneurs sitting at their desk right now, and they have a manager that has their thumb on them, holding them down. They need to develop a culture that allows the employeepreneurs they already have to thrive. Because guess what? Employeepreneurs who are really in this thing, they're asking questions. Do you have a place where I can come and thrive? Who are the employeepreneurs already in this environment? And if you haven't developed the ones you already have, then getting new ones in the door will be a waste of time and money. Because if you don't have the culture in place already, they're not going to stay. So first talk about developing what you already have. And I guarantee you, every single company, good, bad, or indifferent, has employeepreneurs who are waiting for their opportunity to be all of who they are.
True. So maybe internally pipeline people that you think you could develop first.
Absolutely.
And then maybe start going to attract them. How would you, I guess the next point, how would you identify, like what skills are you looking for within someone that you can develop?
So you're looking for those people who have, when they came in the door, and we've seen these people, they come in the door, bright-eyed, they have all of these ideas, they're looking at things, and they ask questions like, have we ever thought about, why do we do it this way? Is there a quicker way? Have you considered? Those people that drive you absolutely bonkers when they walk in the door and you're thinking, you have been here for 5 seconds. Won't you just sit down and learn how we do it first and then ask questions? What you're saying is, don't look at the way we did it. Don't look at the possibilities. Just do it how we've done it. Those people that you saw initially with all these possibilities, tap them first. That was an inkling, a little light shining through and said, hey, you might have an employeepreneur here. They come your nerves just a little bit, but Let's see what this becomes. And the other part too is there has to be a mindset shift for those leaders, because many leaders haven't been taught how to lead employeepreneurs. We've been taught to lead people who are told what to do, they comply and wait for their next step. And we're not used to people who don't need to be told what to do and are already 2 steps ahead, right? And so that requires some training as well.
Yeah, definitely. It's really hard. It's also, you talk about hiring, it's very hard to hire these types of people. Like a lot of people, it's only when they're structuring an interview process, like what do they ask? What skills am I looking for? How do I assess them? You know, it's quite hard to do, you know. I always talk about hiring for potential or hiring for kindness, hiring for employeepreneurs. It just, for many, it just takes a bit of, if they take a moment, just think about, okay, I want to hire this type of person. This is how I should structure my interview process. This is what I'm looking for. You can then start to get these people in.
Right. And you know this because most organizations, when they come to you, they're just hire this person. Well, what do you want them to do? What is the coaching like? Sure, I can hire a database administrator, but what environment will they be working in? What is it? And they're like, no, well, here's the job description. Great. But this person is not going to be working in a job description. They're going to be working in a company. What is that company like?
The problem with the thing with the recruitment sector, and it varies, I think, from level to level, right? But you know, the level that I'm doing, so exec search and stuff, you know, we get time with clients, and you know, not every client is made equally, as you said, but if they do translate and explain and give us a real overview, we can go find people. But if you go down a little bit, and I'm speaking to a lot of people, you know, they're getting like ghosted by companies, and they apply for a job, never hear back. So, you know, a lot of jobs at the early stage, your CV is going to a computer. How is that computer assessing you for these types of things? And you can do psychometrics, fine, if they're set up, but I think there's a lot more thinking that needs to go on around how to do this.
Right. But even with the computer part, so when we have the AI piece of it, that piece of it, I think would actually remain the same, because we still, just because you're looking for employeepreneurs doesn't mean you want unqualified employeepreneurs, right? You still want people who have the skill set and the education and experience to do the job. And right now, that's the piece that most of the software is doing, that very front line. Is this person qualified? And then we get to a human being to say, okay, is this person a good fit for this organization? So I think that first part will be fine for the most part, but it's going to be that second step when we start assessing for those intangibles where it becomes a little bit more difficult.
Yes, yeah, no, definitely. If you make it through.
Yeah.
If you make it through. Yeah. It's still a big gripe. It's still a big gripe of some people. They apply, they don't hear. You do have to obviously be suitably qualified. So, but yeah, designing.
We have a lot of work to do in sourcing. That's the biggest issue that many great candidates have, is I never heard anything. And what drives me crazy about that is, come on, you all, we can automate this. We can automate.
Well, you know, it's tough. I always talk about, and this is not a new concept, but the candidate bill of rights. Yeah. You know, like what level of service can you reasonably expect? But if you're being assessed by a computer, and they've got, I mean, you can expect maybe an email back. You know, if you've interviewed somewhere, you've taken time to think about it, prepare, meet them virtually or not, then maybe a different level of service. Absolutely. So. But the one interesting trend I found over the pandemic is that companies now are much more open to where people are based. You know, a lot of the times they've got to be based in London, and they've got to be based in Frankfurt, or they've got to be based in New York. A lot of people's offices are shut now. It doesn't really matter, which means that the talent pools are much bigger now. So more diverse, better quality hires. So, you know, I think people need to use that more. It's a really good time.
And this is like, all of my people, my clients are going through the roof, because they're like, this is the employeepreneurs time. This is our time to prove it, because this idea that we need people who are independent, and the issue that many organizations had where, okay, our leaders aren't really trained to deal with these types of people on a day-to-day basis. Well, guess what? You're not. They're home and we don't have to see each other as much as we used to. It's not as easy to have your thumb on me and holding me down as much as it used to. So I'm at home and I have a lot more freedom. And these people are killing it. Their team is saying, wait a minute, they're doing stuff. They're being innovative. They're coming up with ideas. They're giving us ideas of how to navigate this whole thing where people are working from home. They're at the crux of really being solution-based people for their companies right now. These are the employeepreneurs.
100%, 100%. You know, there's always opportunity in times like this, and there's, you know, a lot of people that are moaning, you know, complaining, not working. You know, privately, a lot of people probably, they say they're more productive at home. I think if people really look within themselves, they're probably not.
Mm-hmm.
But then there are people that are just on it. You know, they could be at home, they could be in the office, it doesn't matter. But they are focused. They're treating their career like a business, and
the employeepreneurs are. And see, this is like, let me give you a prime example of something an employeepreneur would have done that would have gotten on people's nerves. So the employeepreneur for the past 2 years would have been saying, I don't need to be in here 8 hours a day to get this job done. I can do this at home in 4 hours. And now they're home proving what they've been saying all along, that people kept saying, just be quiet about it. We're coming into the office. And now everyone's realizing, oh my gosh, you were right. If people are actually working efficiently, this can be done in 4 hours at home.
Work efficiently, work hard, because, you know, the best businesses are built on hard work, efficiency, all of those things. So, but now's the time. You're right. You know, develop them, change the mindset. I absolutely love that. So thank you so much. I think we've done a good live. And we could have done a whole politics one. I love the employee entrepreneur thing. I think it's just brilliant. And yeah, I think more companies need to train people in it, but also just yourself as an individual, like seek out the knowledge and, you know, change the mindset and work on it, because it's
absolutely,
you know, it's worked for you. So I think it's great. Thank you again. Thanks for joining me.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure.
We'll do it again soon.
I love it. Talk to you soon.
See ya. Bye-bye.